This is the latest camera from Elgato, the Elgato Facecam Mark 2, and it might actually be the best 1080p webcam for live streaming and content creation. As always, obviously I'm an Elgato partner now, which means they did send me the camera to check out and make videos and stuff on, but they don't get to see any of this content before I post it, so all my opinions in here are going to be my own. When I first started creating content online, which let's be honest is a while ago now, there wasn't exactly that many camera options for live streaming. You really only had two choices, and that was use the inbuilt webcam in like your laptop or something, or you'd pay to get a generic plug-and-play webcam, which let's be honest, didn't look great because they were mostly designed for video calling and chatting with your nan on MSN Messenger. And those were the type of cameras that we basically all used for the best part of a decade, because there wasn't any better options out there really, until the content creation space kind of grew a little bit more, and then brands realized that creators needed something a bit more professional and higher quality. So everyone started making video-focused webcams, and that's around the time that Elgato released the original Elgato Facecam, which, let's be honest, was probably the best 1080p webcam of its time. Fast forward a couple more years down the line now that technology's got slightly better, and Elgato can finally release a Mark II of this camera, which adds some nice quality and quality of life upgrades. So if you do decide to buy the Facecam Mark II, in the box you're obviously going to get the camera itself, as well as a stand to mount it to monitors. You can get a USB-A to USB-C 3.0 cable and some paperwork. Before we start demonstrating the actual quality and what's new about the Elgato Facecam 2, there's something I quickly want to mention is how impressed I am with the new packaging, which is completely plastic free now, which means it's super recyclable and sustainable, so I'm sure some of you out there will be happy with that. So the first new thing you may have noticed about the Facecam Mark II is actually the redesigned body, which isn't just for aesthetic purposes, even though it does now match the Elgato Facecam Pro, just a little bit smaller. It's actually more functional because it's not as high up like it was previously, which means when you pair this with the new redesigned like monitor mount, it means that your lens is now lower down and closer to eye level instead of looking down at you like previously. Speaking of the redesigned body though, Elgato knows how important privacy is when it comes to content creation and just webcams in general, but you may have noticed that they've took the lens cap out of the box like the previous version, but that's because this time it's actually built into the body. So as you can see, here's the lens, but now you can just slide across the privacy screen, which honestly I think is an amazing upgrade because a lot of people complained that they kept losing it or misplacing it in the previous version. Other than that though, we've got a couple of other like upgrades to the camera. We've now got a slightly improved prime lens, still an f2.4, which means it's decent in low light, but now it's slightly wider than previously. So the last one had an 82-degree field of view. This one has an 84, which isn't like a huge improvement, but it's nice to have a slightly wider lens than previously. And for those of you wondering how that actually translates into real camera terms, if you're using a full frame camera like this one, 82 degrees is the equivalent of a 24mm lens, or if you're using a crop sensor camera like the A5100 ZVE10, that kind of camera, then instead the 82 degrees will be the same as a 16mm lens on those, which as we all know is a popular focal length for live streaming and content creation. Not only that though, the Mark II actually has a slightly improved processor, which means it's going to have more accurate colors, slightly better noise reduction in low light situations, and also a slightly wider dynamic range because now this camera can do HDR video. I'll explain all the details of that stuff later on when we get to the camera hub section, as well as a couple of other tricks that this camera has up its sleeve, but I've kept you waiting long enough and I'm sure you want to see what this camera actually looks like in use, so let's swap to the Elgato Facecam Mark II. Are you guys ready? This is the Elgato Facecam Mark II, and before I give my opinion or say anything else about this camera, I want to know what you think. Do you think it looked good? Is it something that you get for your content creation or live streams or even YouTube videos or whatever? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but personally, I think this looks fantastic as far as webcams go. Obviously, it's not going to be as good as my mirrorless camera, which is obviously 4K and like costs thousands of dollars or whatever because it's got fancy lenses and filters and all sorts of nice stuff on it. But as a content creation camera, this webcam looks pretty awesome and would be more than good enough for live streams or your YouTube videos. Also, just so you know, this is the exact same setup that I would usually use for all my videos. I haven't changed anything about it at all because I wanted it to be kind of a fair, equal comparison between the two setups. So my lights in the same place. I've got all my background lights and stuff on, which is honestly difficult to like expose properly for most cameras. But as you can see, it's coping quite well. It looks really decent, but I will say that it didn't look exactly like this when I first took it out of the box and plugged it in. It looked pretty good, But as with all Elgato products, the hardware is great. The thing that makes it amazing and that next step beyond is obviously the software that comes with it. And this is no different. It comes with some software, so you can customize it and stylize it and just set up the camera correctly so it looks good for your content. So this is Elgato's Camera Hub software, and within here you can change all the camera settings to customize it so you can actually set it up the way that you want it to look. However, straight out of the box, the camera kind of looked like this instead, which, as you can see, doesn't look terrible, but it's not as good as it was previously. The white balance isn't correct. It's also a different exposure and stuff. So I had to change some settings to make sure that it looked correct. Something I really like about Elgato when it comes to their face cams is that they treat them like they're actually professional cameras. So all the settings that are in the Camera Hub software are the same as what you'd see on a professional camera like this. So you have ISO, which controls the brightness of your actual image. You've got shutter speed, which affects motion blur as well as exposure a bit. You've got white balance, which changes the color of your image depending on the lighting and setup and stuff you use. And then finally, you've also got like saturation, sharpness, and contrast, which can customize the image so you get it looking how you actually want to for your content. However, using the Facecam Mark II, we've actually got a couple of new settings in Camera Hub to customize and improve the actual quality of our camera. Starting from the bottom of Camera Hub, we actually have customizable noise reduction now, which goes from off to light, medium, and up to high, depending on like how much grain and noise you want to remove from your image. So if you're in a low light situation where you don't have all the fancy lights like this, you might need to go up to high noise reduction, which will remove a lot of that grain and noise from the image, but the sacrifice of making it look a little bit softer. Next up, we've got a new setting in exposure, and that is this dynamic range setting here. And I briefly mentioned it earlier on in the video. This is where you would set high dynamic range video options, which helps to kind of expose a high contrast scene if you have one. So personally, I keep it on standard because I just like how this looks, but you might want to go up to high instead, which will kind of expose an image a little bit better. If you've got really bright highlights and really dark shadows, it might balance it out a little bit more. For those of you that don't know though, HDR images on video is slightly different to how it works in like video games and stuff. What your camera is effectively doing is taking two images at once and then merging that in its processor. So one of the images will be overexposed, the second one will be slightly underexposed, and then with magic and processing power, merge them together to create something that's exposed correctly and has a bigger dynamic range, meaning that you can see more detail in shadows and in highlights, which should just look better overall. And lastly, in the Camera Hub section, we've actually updated the pan, tilt, and zoom options now. So obviously you can still digitally zoom in and reframe your image however you want, but this time around we've added something called face tracking, which means that if you have a good enough GPU, preferably something that's 2060 and up, which I don't have unfortunately, but you can click that and then it will automatically reframe you and follow you around the screen as you kind of move. Obviously be aware that this is a digital zoom still, because this camera is still only 1080p, so if you're using face tracking and stuff like that, your resolution is going to look smaller, and the further you zoom in, the more blocky and pixelated it will look. Once you've finished customizing your entire like camera settings and stuff and you've got it looking how you want it to look for your streams, all you have to do then is to come up to the top of the options here and press save, and once you actually do that, it gets saved to the camera's flash memory directly, which means that you'll never have to like reset this up at the start of a stream again, or if you want to move your camera to another location or travel with it and stuff, the settings that you've saved here will always be on the camera and always look good. Like all Elgato products, this is compatible obviously with the Stream Deck as well, so you can set up different presets or different settings and then use the Stream Deck to control all of that. For example, you can like zoom in on your face if you wanted to, or you can go over to like a product shot in the background, or if you've got a pet sleeping somewhere, set up a preset for that, and then finally just come back to normal, all using the Stream Deck, and all can be controlled obviously in the Stream Deck software. And yes, obviously, before any of you ask the question, you can put the new Facecam on the Elgato prompter. You just have to use this L bracket to mount it on the back, as well as use the shroud back plate. That's the one with the cloth-like fabric at the back to cover so that no light leaks in. But you will be happy to hear that Elgato have designed and will be uploading hopefully soon a backplate which is 3D printable, so you can download the actual design, 3D print it yourself, build it, attach it to your prompter, and then just mount the new Facecam straight to the prompter in a much easier, more simple way. And finally, that brings us on to the actual price of the Facecam, which is obviously an important factor when purchasing a camera like this, and I believe at launch is going to cost around $150 or so. I believe it's $149.99 on the Elgato store. However, if you do want to save a few pennies, use my discount code here and you'll get like 5% off on the store, which honestly isn't too bad. Obviously, a camera like this one doesn't have all the bells and whistles of all the higher end cameras. However, it's amazing quality and it's just a plug and play kind of options, which makes it perfect for a beginner trying to up their video quality, or someone who needs like a simple plug and play setup for when they travel and stuff. Because honestly, when it comes to content creation, you really need to learn far too much sometimes when you want to upgrade to like the professional cameras and stuff like that. So it's easier just to buy something that you know looks good straight out the box and you just plug in and get into actually making videos or going live and just generally being entertaining rather than having a degree in filmmaking just to make your content look good. Overall, this is a worthy upgrade to an already quality camera, because the original Facecam was fantastic as is, but this just builds upon it a little bit more, adding some more features and quality of life stuff, which makes it a great choice for anyone looking to upgrade their video quality. Anyway, hopefully this video was useful for you and there aren't too many mistakes and stuff in here, because I have been recording this stupidly late at night. Started it at like 1 o'clock in the morning. It's now 7 a.m. and I'm only just finishing the edit and stuff, which I need to do a thumbnail and upload this. So if you have made it this far in the video, give it a like, please, just to make this work worthwhile. And if you do have any questions, leave me a comment down below, or go and follow me on TikTok and ask me stuff over there, because I'm going to be making videos about this over there and going live probably. And hopefully I will see you all in the next one. I'm exhausted.